Hello there, Mr. Sutton here, bringing you the IM377 Part 2 homework solutions on Law of Cosines.
So for this one, we have three sides of a triangle that we don't know is a right triangle or not, and we're looking for an angle. We're going to go ahead and use the law of cosines for this then, if we have side, side, side. So that's cosine of C equals a squared plus b squared minus c squared over 2ab. So we have cosine of x, and then the c value in this case, it's always across from the angle that you want. So if this is the angle you want, then your c value is this 28 across from it. So then a and b are the legs of that angle. We've got 24 squared plus 19 squared, and then we subtract 28 squared. And this is all going to be over 2 times 24 times 19. Let's clean up that right side on the calculator. So plugging that into my fancy fraction mode with alpha y equals, pressing enter, comes out to 51 over 304. We'll take their word for it. But be careful, that's just the cosine of x. To get x itself, we still need to take the inverse cosine of that. So back to the calculator it is. We're doing second cosine, and then I'll arrow up to grab that fraction that we just got for the cosine. And then close the parentheses if you wish, press enter, and that is going to be 80.3, and that's in degrees because that's an angle. For this one, we have a side, side, side situation looking for an angle. So because this is not a right triangle, we're going to have to use the law of cosines here. So cosine of C in this case equals a squared plus b squared minus c squared over 2ab. So we've got cosine of x then equals big fraction. And then the c value here, that's across from the angle that we're looking for. So that's going to be 14 in this case. And then a and b will be the 12 and the 17, the legs of the angle. So we've got 12 squared plus 17 squared minus 14 squared all over 2 times 12 times 17. Let's go ahead and simplify that right side on the calculator. So using alpha y equals to get fancy fraction for all of this and pressing enter, we end up with 79 over 136. So that's what cosine of x is equivalent to. To get x itself, I have to inverse cosine that value. So let me go back to the calculator for that. And let me see here. We'll do second cosine, arrow up to get my input, press enter, close the parentheses if you want, enter again, and that's 54.5 degrees. To find the missing side of this non-right triangle, since I have a side angle side situation, I'll need to use the law of cosines. So I'll use the one that says c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cosine of c. So we've got then x squared equals our two sides here, 20 squared plus 19 squared minus 20 times 19 times 2. And then we have a cosine of 50 also getting thrown in there. So let me simplify that right side with my calculator. So all of that stuff down there comes out to about 272.5, or at least that's what x squared is. To get x itself, let me go ahead and square root that. And when I do that on the calculator, I'm just going to actually take the full value that I just found. So let me just arrow up and grab that, press enter again, and we've got 16.5 for the final answer. On this problem, I need a missing angle, and I've already got three sides. Side, side, side is telling me that I should use law of cosines. So we've got cosine of C equals a squared plus b squared minus c squared all over 2 times ab. So we've got cosine of x then, and that's going to equal, well, let's see, c is always across from the angle, so that's this 28.2 side across from the x. So a and b are the legs of the angle. We have 17.2 squared plus 29.1 squared minus 28.2 squared all over 2 times 17.2 times 29.1. Let's plug all of that stuff on the right side into the calculator just to get something a little nicer to look at. So if I do alpha y equals and use fancy fraction for all that crazy stuff, press enter. Well, my calculator can't reduce that to a fraction, at least a nice one, because all those decimals. So I just get this crazy looking decimal. I'm just going to write it down as 0.347, and that's what cosine of x equals. So I'm actually going to use the full value of this thing on the calculator for my next step. But if you were to use just a rounded off version, take it out to at least 3 decimals. because cosine's pretty sensitive to even like the thousandth decimal place. But we're not quite done, right? Because to get x, we now need to take the inverse cosine of both sides. So going back to the calculator, I'll do second cosine to do that. And then let me just arrow up and press enter on that whole decimal. Press parentheses, press enter. And that is going to be 69.7 for that angle. So that's going to be degrees. For this one, I've got this non-right triangle, or at least I don't know for certain if it's a right triangle or not. Probably isn't. I'm looking for an angle. I've got all three sides. So this is law of cosines staring us in the face here. So I'm going to use the version that says cosine of c, because I'm looking for an angle. Cosine of c equals a squared plus b squared minus c squared over 2ab. So we can write cosine of x then equals big fraction. And then for my c value that I should probably pick out in advance here, that's always across from the angle that I want. Here's the angle I want. Here is the side across from it, this 17. And then a and b are the other two sides. So we've got, for a or b, either one, 25 squared plus 26 squared. And then we'll be subtracting that 17 squared. That's the only non-negotiable there. And that's all going to be over 2 times 25 times 26. Let's see what this stuff on the right reduces to if I use the calculator. So plugging all that into my fancy fraction mode from alpha y equals and pressing enter, I end up with 253 over 325. Glad I didn't do that by hand. That's what cosine equals, though. To actually get x, I'm going to have to undo cosine with inverse cosine. So let me go back to the calculator, and I'm now going to do second cosine, cosine inverse of, let me press up arrow, press enter to grab that fraction I just got, press enter again, and that's going to be 38.9 degrees. In this situation, we're looking for a side of a triangle. It's not a right triangle, and we've got a side angle side situation in terms of what we do know. So this is going to be law of cosines, the one that says c squared, because we're looking for a side here, little c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cosine c. So that's going to be x squared equals, and now my legs are both going to have to get squared. So 8.6 squared plus 9.5 squared minus 2 times 8.6 times 9.5 times the cosine of our angle that they gave us, 104. Let me clean up the right side a little bit using my calculator. So here I am on the calculator. I've entered all the stuff on the right side of my equation in there, off screen and off camera. Pressing enter for all that stuff, we get about 203.7 if I were to round it off. But there's no point in really just calling this done because I still have to square root to get x instead of x squared. So let's keep going on the calculator. Let me do second and then square root, and then let me go up here and grab that output and then press enter. That gives us 14.3 for our final answer.